Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So it's been a couple of days and unfortunately have quite a short available time slot today, so just going to have to make do. I'm going to try and get the research process working from the castle. So we've got the mining and we've got the construction. So research is the only other time-based process within the game that we haven't covered. We had some basics of it working before in the earlier prototypes, so I'm just going to try and get it working in the new system with the new components. So I am going to create or continue the process that we have with the components, and therefore going to create another actor component. I think that's what I had it before. Best check. Construction component. Actor component. Yeah, another actor component for the research. And so in this case, I forgot to inherit from my construction component. But like I was saying before, the construction component does have some parts that are beneficial. Assigning a population to a job, finding an existing job, they would apply to research as well. But equally, I was considering refactoring the construction. I think I will just so that this works in the same way. We'll create it from the construction component instead. At least that gives us access to the code from the construction component. So again, much like we did in the mining component, we may need to override the update construction jobs. But the research jobs are going to be much more similar to construction jobs than the mining was, in fact. So at the moment I have two unused and empty arrays within our castle for unlocked technologies and researched technologies. They're not populated with anything, and one thing that I don't know from the original game that I haven't been able to prove one way or another yet is that if a sector has technologies that have been unlocked, whether they remain unlocked if the owner of that particular sector either loses it and regains it, or even if a different owner gains it. So I'm just going to at the moment assume that the research is reset and that it would have to therefore be redone, and that means we'd have to populate the castle with the research that is available at the time the castle is constructed. So I'm going to go into the technologies. Now we did have some of this working before, where it could pick technologies based on a given. That one doesn't have an epoch. Definitely should be that one. These must have been the original 0 epochs, and maybe actually they all are wrong. The highest epoch should be 1990, 1980, 1945. Well, there is some 2001, so maybe that's okay. Maybe it's just the very early ones that have been lost. So from the available research perspective, the available research should be 4 epochs higher than the current sector. So the research needs to be stored. So even though I've got the research component, it was always a bit awkward to store stuff in those components, because getting it back out of them is a bit awkward. I could put all the research in there, the unlocked and the research technologies, but we're not storing the resources, the mined resources, in the mining component. We're not storing them in the, can't even remember where we're storing them now because they're not even in the castle. Where did I put the resources? Yeah, I never really used the miners from the mine or the researchers in the remaining time, so I was going to use the the buildings to manage the particular tasks. But as I've said before, the problem with that is some of the buildings don't exist, even though the kind of responsibility of that building does. As you can research immediately, even though the lab is the last building to be unlocked. So putting it in the research, putting it in the... Oh, okay, yes, they were jobs. Putting the research in the lab... Excuse me, one moment. Yeah, putting the research in the lab makes it difficult when the lab doesn't exist, and the same with the mine. You can gather resources very early on, you don't have a mine. So, we'll just drop out the population part right now. So we're going to say that the unlocked technologies are obviously the ones that are available to research but haven't been, and research technologies are the ones that have been researched. So we basically, when the castle is constructed in the begin play, we want to... Yeah, so what we've done there is kind of preset all the building jobs. And we might as well just do it immediately after that. We want to... I guess we're just going to call it... Get available technologies. So the game actually calls them designs, even though I've called them technologies. Technologies kind of is a more common terminology for that kind of thing. But designs kind of sounds quite nice, so perhaps I would change it, just again so there's some similarities. But for now, because I've started with one, I'll keep that going. So the purpose of this function is to populate our unlocked technologies. Now, what it would do, maybe it should therefore be refresh. Yeah, so what it would do is actually populate the unlocked technologies based on the resources that are available as well. But that's again an awkward connection because the resources are currently actually stored within the mining component. So we want to get the current epoch, and the current epoch would be the we're in the castle, so it would be the sector. And then from the sector we can get the epoch. Now we need to convert that epoch to an integer, because we need to know what the minimum, well, the current epoch is plus 4. So then we need to add 4 to it. And then we need to convert that to an epoch again. Do that. Byte to epoch enum, that's the one I was looking for. Let me go back. So this at the end of here is the highest technology epoch that we want, and this is the lowest. So data table. So we get all the row names from our technology. Oh. Well, that's going to slow me down. Perhaps I was going too quick for it. So I don't know how much would have been saved because I really hadn't saved it manually. Yeah, so we don't have that function at all in our castle. Okay, let's start again. Refresh. Available technologies. Get the sector. Get the epoch to an integer. Add 4. To a byte. Byte to enum epoch. And get data table row names for the technologies. So actually, probably, can we do less than or greater than? Yeah, so when it does epoch comparisons, it's bytes anyway. So we don't actually need that final epoch unless we were printing it out. But we'll leave it in for now. So get data table row. So this is our technology. Now we just need to know whether the technology is yes, so it's greater than or equal to the earliest technology, and it must be less than but not equal to our next technology. I think that one can go there instead. And needs to be and. And oh, come on, branch. So if that's true, we want to add to the available technologies. And I'm not worried about any of the other values of it. We'll just say if it's available, let's add its name, because inevitably we don't know when we're going to need all the rest of the information. We could probably store the entire object. That might come in well, it would come in useful, but it's whether it comes in useful soon enough to warrant doing that. But at the moment we'll just store the name. So that's our available technologies, and that's going to take our sector regardless of what our sector is. Now, one thing that I just realized with that is the sector goes up a technology. We don't actually want the research to go up the technology with it. It's always 4 levels above the map, the start epoch, not 4 levels above the current. Depending on the sector, it is actually possible to research one of the end technologies before you've researched any of the early technologies. So this bit needs to change. For the time being, since I'm just testing it, I'll leave it as is, but I will say should use level epoch, not current sector epoch. So I'll definitely need to fix that a bit later on. So when we construct our castle, we just need to do that. That gives us our unlocked technologies, and now we need to display them. We are running out a bit of room in our UI. Test sector HUD. Not that one, that one's no good to me. Test sector widget. So we are adding just generally these task. Why is my map broken? What should my map have been? I forget what those values were. They shouldn't have been lost, but maybe somewhere along the line. Maybe the crash caused them to be lost, or maybe I think that was the sprites, wasn't it? Yeah, because I remember making a sprite variable just to connect it up, so I could select the mine, the factory, and the lab. Okay, so we render the construction tasks, we render the resource tasks. Just going to switch them around, and then in between we're going to add render research tasks. Just so we've got a reasonable order. Now the research tasks is going to come from the castle. I think we have need the owning player, need the basic tasks, and that. We're adding things to different containers, aren't we, in here? Probably doesn't make any sense to do that. Don't need a resource container, we just have a task container, because they're all going to work in the same way. Basically should be the same result. Yep. So we've got the resources that are available based on this current tech level, and the buildings that are always available, because I haven't put any logic in there yet. We do have an error though. Yes, okay, so there's a potential that the current sector is not actually available within the castle immediately within this context, because we're running this at the construction of the castle, effectively, which the castle is constructed before it's attached, and therefore the sector reference is not there. given the fact that we don't actually want the sector epoch anyway, I'm just going to make one. Make a literal enum, and we pick the lowest sector technology level. And we also want to change the tech level of that sector. That's done in the level at the moment. Put that down to the lowest as well, just so we're consistent. And now within our render, we want to get the castle, so I know we get the castle somewhere in this code. Okay, at the moment we get the player pawn, check that it's valid, get the castle sector, the castle reference, check that's valid. So just do that same process again. Thought I had a macro for that. I thought I created one last time. Get player castle, yeah, so we'll use the get player castle. We should update these to use the get player castle too. So we get the player castle, and then we need to get data table row. Before that we need to loop through. Looping through all of the technologies here to get the rest of the information. So the basic task, the name is going to be the technology name, which comes from here, so we need to get the available technologies. So we need to get available, put them in the castle, didn't I? Oh, unlocked technologies. Get unlocked technologies. Iterate through all the technologies that are available. Take the name and so there's different sprites depending on where that particular technology is used. Depending on the technology, it can be used. It may not be used in all those cases, but for the research task, it's always going to be the laboratory sprite that we want. That should show me the right technologies, so let's give that a go. Wherever it's gone. There we go, so we've got our stick, spear, sling, rock, spear, bow and arrow, more bows and arrows, oil, 1 to 4 shields. Yep, so that's 4 attack, 4 defense, and 4 repair, which is what we get at this tech level. Obviously they're all immediately unlocked, but it would depend on the resources. The resources I do have some information for. I don't know again how accurate it is depending on the version of the game. I think that the PC version might differ in terms of what resources are required for what technology. And I also have it in quite a complicated data structure in a JSON file. I think I'm going to just kind of simplify that down to a basic table, even though it's not going to be quite as smart in terms of the structure. It's actually going to work. And the fact that it's unlikely that I'll add more resources or new resources anyway, kind of restricting the resources that are available to the game by putting them in as data table columns isn't going to cause too much of a problem. So that's how I'm going to deal with the resources for the technologies, and whether that's for unlocking the technologies, because you need the quantity of resources to be able to make research the design, or whether it's actually going to be used, and it will be used for actually kind of consuming the resources when you construct one of those things. So now we have our technologies, we need to ensure that we have those jobs. So once we've added the available technology to the unlocked technology array, which we do have to clear here, just because we will be calling this function multiple times, so we might as well have the clear in there from the start. We then need to get the we're in the castle, yep, the research component. Oh, we haven't even added it yet, have we? So we get the research component, and we want to make job, was it? Nope. Begin job. Begin a job for each of the researchers that we're adding. Bit of a long way around there. So we are going to use a couple more properties from the structure, so I'll leave that open. So we create that job, and we also need the research time. We don't need the entire blob node, we need the time. Yeah, so strange conversion, but that's fine. Them the other way around, I think. Although the other way around read better, even if it doesn't look as good. Put them back. Very important to get the node the right way around. Okay, so that puts the jobs in place, and one thing we can't do at the moment is allocate the people properly, so we need to save that. Yeah, so when we came to do the research, the resources even, we overrode the widget, which meant that we could handle the specific result of pressing the plus and minus buttons, but obviously in this case we're using the task widget, and the task widget currently is hard coded to how the buttons are used, which I think is something that I kind of worked over or worked differently with my widgets of the past, where rather than actually handling those events here, we handle them outside of here where the widget is created, which would make sense in this case too. So here's where we create that widget and we bind to both those events. We are in a function here, aren't we? Yes. So we can't get to these as events. Okay, unfortunately I have to cut this short, even shorter than I expected, but I should have extra time tomorrow, or more time tomorrow, so I will pick this up. It would be definitely be at an earlier time. It'll be going to be tomorrow afternoon. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.